Greetings, everyone. Welcome to CRWS Counter Racist Business Meeting on the book Race Code War, The Power of Words, Images, and Symbols on the Black Psyche by Khari Enaharo, covering pages 61 through 76. Getting started, I'm going to start off with one of the first earlier words in the readings, which is on page 61, and it's the downtrodden. And I was really intrigued by this word because I've heard this word in passing, but I have never ever paid any attention to what it meant. And after reading it all makes sense, and I will be showing some imagery regarding this word as well. Actually, let me get that on the screen now. Okay. All right. So the downtrodden. This is a code word for Black and poor people. Particular interest should be given to the word down because of its long-term association with Black people. The language is designed to portray Black people as beneath whites in all areas of life. Thousands of word combinations that use the word down word in social description context are generally making reference to the color Black or a Black and non-white population. The word trodden means to tread. The use of this word is also quite interesting. The term implies that Black people are low-life beings who tread on the goodness of society, or better put, white society. So here on the screen, you will see a ton of articles involving people known as, classified as India. And if you know anything about that area of the world, you would know that there's tons of dark-skinned people who are classified as untouchable, who live quite a horrendous existence, I imagine. So you can check out this Economic Times Downtrodden. There's a ton of articles that use this vernacular, this word. You'll see. So that's all I really had about this, and it's just really tragic that there's billions of people who have this dark skin and this racial classification as being non-white, but yet do not have the will to counter the system. But hopefully the programs like these will encourage folks globally to attempt to counter the problem of racism and white supremacy. Any thoughts from the panel?
Yes. Actually, when I heard the word downtrodden, I don't think I've ever heard it other than like reading it in text, like whether it's in books or even now. I don't think I've actually heard it in real life as someone saying it out loud. But even thinking of other words, especially focusing on the word down and other phrases that we use that are associated with it, such as like I'm down or you're not down, like are you down to go here? Like things like that that I frequently say, which I'm not going to anymore just to understand it, but just want to point those out as well.
Thank you, Nanaya. Any more comments before we continue with this race code war downtrodden?
Yeah, I agree with what was said by 0526 and Nanaya. It's interesting that all of these words that we'll eventually get into, at the end of the day, they all mean Black person, non-white person, but I'm gonna, primarily focus on them meaning Black person. And there's so many articles and so many narratives that involve Black males being downtrodden, people from Black youth being downtrodden. So consciously and subconsciously, the image of Black people is always negative, no matter what the headlines say. It could be someone struggling and overcoming the odds, but they'll still use language such as downtrodden. So it's never really a beneficial term to be used on a Black person.
Excellent input. Thank you. And I totally agree. Mr. Damages, you're gonna chime in?
Yeah, I was looking at the word downtrodden and his description of the word and what it means, and I was just asking myself, is it an accurate word? Is it an accurate way to describe Black people, I guess, in the system of race and white supremacy? And I think, let me see what I wrote. And I said, downtrodden, it describes the condition of Black people in a system of racism, white supremacy. We are the ones who are down and beneath others and are definitely trodden on as well. So what's inaccurate for me is the use of the term to describe Black people without also describing why we're in this position. But as far as I understand, the downtrodden and exactly what it means, I think it does accurately describe the condition of Black people in a system of racism and white supremacy.
Very well said. Ray?
Yes, sir. Again, I'm going to read the definition of downtrodden from the Webster's New World College Dictionary, 4th edition, which states trampled on or down, oppressed, subjugated, tyrannized over. But my own thoughts, when I thought about the term downtrodden, I thought about the term down and out. Down here in the southern section of the United States, there is a term that's used, down bad, which would correctly, spell out what our position is. From Race Cold War, one thing that stuck out to me, the word trodden means to tread. And a common quote that I hear amongst the white supremacists is, don't tread on me, which to me sounds like, don't treat me like a nigger. And nextluxury.com defines don't tread on me as a permanent expression of defiance, a devotion to the basic principle of individual liberty and individual freedom. I'll mute my line.
Wow. Yeah, in regards to what was just said by Mr. Ray and Smokey Damages, I think, yeah, this is a accurate description of people who have been classified as Black and non-white people. We have definitely been put at the bottom of the so-called social ladder, so-called society. Black people have been deliberately sabotaged, retarded to a degree where we're at the bottom, and the majority of us don't even have a clue what that means or what that looks like. Yet it's always in our faces, the reality of us being the so-called downtrodden. So very, very interesting race Cold War, and comparing that with Don't Tread on Me. Yeah, that what Ray said is very, very accurate. This is white people, persons who classify themselves as white, would never allow themselves to be treated like Black people have allowed ourselves to be treated, and it's very, very tragic to experience such a reality. The next word here is credit worthy or credibility, and this is a really, really interesting concept that has been used to, again, sabotage, victimize Black people especially. So it says here on page 61, this is a racial code word that is used in an economic context to keep Black people in a materially deficient state. The concept of creditworthiness has more to do with the level of trust and belief in the viability of the individual than it does with such things as economic payback schedules. The idea of being creditworthy is synonymous with the idea of being a worthy, virtuous, red-blooded American. Under white supremacy, no Black individual is worthy. Only a white man or a white woman can be sanctioned as worthy. I just reminded of this whole credit concept and how it has been used to sabotage the relationships between Black males and Black females, because some of you all may be familiar with phrases such as, I need me a nigga with good credit, or he got bad credit, or you got to work on your credit. I've heard this a lot during my existence of being a person classified as Black, and it's very, very telling, because this credit system has been arranged and set up by white people, of course, powerful white people. And then we have millions of Black people who find themselves stuck with poor credit, incorrect credit, because we do not understand that this is a sabotaging tool against us. And the only people who will ever have good credit in a system of white supremacy are white people, are the people who white people have chosen to have so-called good credit. So it's really, really interesting concept. And go ahead, folks who want to share.
Yes, this is Kwaku. For me, when I was reading about creditworthy and credibility, a lot of the word risk came to mind. And for me, I interpret this concept as Black people aren't creditworthy. Having Black skin already makes you not worthy of credit or not worthy of credibility. And if you are already assumed as a risk, so somebody who, because when he says the concept of creditworthiness has more to do with the level of trust and belief in the viability of the individual than it does with such things as economic payback schedules. When Black people are constantly seen as risks, they aren't expected, they're not trustworthy, they're not expected to, they're not creditworthy, they're not trustworthy, they're not expected to make any of those economic paybacks. They're just seen as risks. And so that's kind of what I was associating creditworthy with, risks and being Black, having Black skin. Hope that made sense. Got a little tongue tied there.
I also I think the term credibility and creditworthy definitely influences my decisions, and I feel like it could be a way to mislead a lot of Black people to put themselves in environments that are like against them, such as higher academia, especially predominantly white institutions. So I understand that word, and I understand the value of being validated by quote unquote these white institutions. So being classified as Black, I understand full enough that it's gonna be much harder for me to do anything because I'm already seen as low value, high risk, and as least words as I can say, low value, high risk.
Yeah. And,
Also,
go ahead.
I think also with that, to go along with both you, Kwaku and Sir, that risk is why I think we're not taught about it. We're not even considered, important to know this information, and why so many Black individuals don't know anything about credit or how to get it, or that it might be necessary to get these things in the system of white supremacy. It's that risk factor for sure.
Yeah, and
Also,
go ahead.
Also, just to add to that, when I read this section, I definitely thought about education. Like, I don't know why, I just felt like most of us are told very young, like, oh, you must go to college or you must do some sort of something in academia for you to become credible just in life in general. Like, if you don't have a degree, quote unquote, you're not even just like credited. Everyone always asks you, oh, did you go to college? Oh, what degree do you have? So we're almost like in this never ending cycle of trying to prove to ourselves that we're credible by going to school. But we're not even learning the information that is necessary to live life, because how many of us go to school and then we still come out with like mental health issues or all these other things, because it's part of the system, but it's also thinking about like, we still come out and we're still not credible or worthy. And that really is just something that just catches us off guard automatically, because we think as soon as we get this degree, we're going to have this high paying job, or we're going to be not even paying job, but we're going to be accepted into whiteness basically. But you're never accepted into whiteness. And you start to learn that once you get your degree and you're not accepted. So it's hard truth.
Indeed. And I'm reminded what you said, yeah. I'm sure many of you have seen the clip with the organization of dads who have been going into schools to correct the incorrect behavior that has been caused by um, Black people being victims of racism and white supremacy. So these dads, they go into the school and help to correct that behavior. And there's an interview with these group of Black males talking to a white man. And one of the first thing he asked them, so none of you guys have like any degrees or counseling degrees and whatnot, which goes to show you how white people have set up a system where, they make it so in order to be so-called credible or have any sort of validation, they make it go through the institutions and get these titles and whatnot. Oftentimes, those titles are not necessary. One is just attempting to help other Black people. These are just barriers. And again, if you are a person who has been classified as Black, especially Black, then you already are unworthy. You already have very, very no credibility, and unless you can find some white people to vouch for you, which is also a race code word in this text. So very, very telling, and it just white people have done a phenomenal job at organizing themselves around this race concept. White people are the only race. Always remember that there's only one race, the white race. They've done a phenomenal job of organizing themselves behind their race and behind the institutions, behind these words. It's very, very ingenious, but I'm so glad that people like Neely Fuller Jr., Khari Enaharo, Edward Williams, Dr. Francis Christ, Dr. Muriel Ami, and so many others have done a lot of the hard work for us. They've done the research, they wrote the books. You just have to take the information and utilize it. And so we're able to counter the system. So any more comments?
It's funny how when even applying for some jobs that they will look up your credit score. And if you score at a low percent, then you're not allowed certain employment. And that also goes for housing as well. When non-white people are looking for an apartment, if their credit score is low, they either say no, don't allow them to get the apartment, or they have to overpay because they are a so-called risk. And that prevents non-white people, to get proper housing, to be able to have a place to stay, which is horrible, which is really disgusting.
Something that I learned too, to add to what Helen was saying, was that when you're applying for apartments, if they just do credit checks, if you get multiple credit checks, your credit score goes down. So think about it as like a Black person who already faces housing discrimination and that people don't want to rent to you. You're going to try to apply to more places because you're going to have better options, because you're going to get rejected from a lot of them. And to think that you even trying to think ahead by applying to more places is actually detrimental, because you're going to, every time an apartment place checks your credit score goes down. And I didn't even know that until I looked it up. I was wondering why my credit score kept going down. So
I wanted to add to what they said. Recently, when I got my last job, I didn't even know about the credit check, or like that was something that counts against you in the hiring process. But the way that Helen put it, it definitely, I think, adds to the validity of this word, credit worthy and credibility. And also to add to what Ash said, I believe I'm like 98% sure that anytime they check your credit, your credit score goes down. So if you're applying for a credit card, if you're applying for anything that has to do with credit, if they check your score, it goes down. That could be error.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how arbitrary the whole system is. And it's almost like unfortunate that it's something that people teach younger people to aspire to, because I don't think that it's really just a setup. And I think no matter how much you want to like, I don't know, get your credit score really high so that you can get a loan for a house. I think you always, if you don't really understand the system, you're not going to be properly prepared for the ways that they're going to change the rules specifically for you. I mean against you, if that makes sense.
The sophisticated sabotage, this whole credit concept, sophisticated sabotage, just along with money, the concept of money has been sophisticated sabotage, and just the whole system is that sophisticated sabotage, targeting mostly people who have been classified as Black, people who are other classifications of non-white. They are also heavily victimized and heavily mistreated. But in order for the system to remain powerful, it seems that Black must be attacked the hardest, with the most aggression, it seems. Anyone have any more comments?
Yeah, actually, I was looking at credibility in terms of what do white people think of us, and what gives us credibility in a system of racism, white supremacy, and it's the kind of credibility that white people give us. So you're deemed credit worthy, or you have credibility if white people say you are credible, right? So if you have qualifications, for example, that are signed by people who are other than white, if you're a Black person, then, forget about it. So, if they'll ask you stuff like, where did you train to be a doctor? In Kenya or something, and they say, what, is there a British school down there or something? Meaning, and they mean by that, if they ask, is that a British school, they say, they mean really, is that a white school? I remember, like, another example of this, I remember when Dr. Ben years ago was talking about Black people, like the Black Falasha community of Jewish people in Ethiopia as they were entering Israel years ago, and being told that they'd have to reconvert in order to be classified as Jewish, even though they'd been practicing Judaism with the same Torah, same Talmud, same bar mitzvah, etc., etc. So in order to be a credible Jewish person, the white supremacists have to give you your credibility. So, the strongest religion and the most effective and functional way to be looked upon as credible is by having the backing of racist man and racist woman. That's what makes you credible in a system of racism, white supremacy.
Yeah, and that I think that's part of why it's so hard to even identify a white person as a racist, because as Nelly Flores says, we need a white person to say that person is a racist. So it goes to show how powerless of a collective we truly are. Thank you, Mr. Damages.
To add on to what I was just thinking about, that whole idea of credibility, and I recently learned that during the March on Washington, there was a white man on stage, and they had him on stage to pull the mic if any Black person said anything, like when any of the Black speakers said anything that was like, too Black or too radical. So I think it's really interesting that people look up to the March on Washington, but don't realize that even in that moment, they didn't see those Black people as credible to the point where they were censoring them like live.
Yep, I agree. Credibility means validation by people who are classified as white.
Mr. /0?
Yes, I would just like to ask the group a question really quick. If Black people are not credible, are we incredible? But now let me read again. I'm reading from the dictionary. It doesn't hit as hard unless it's coming from white people. You know what I'm saying? So the definition for incredible is not credible, unbelievable, seeming too unusual or improbable to be possible.
With that definition, I would say Black people are incredible.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would agree also. Absolutely. Wow.
Ray, could you read that definition again, please?
Yes, sir. Incredible, not credible, unbelievable, seeming too unusual or improbable to be possible. I know that word.
Yeah, yeah. I'd say maybe black people are both that and not that. I think if that makes any sense, because I think
Like black people were once that, but now they're no longer.
yeah.
Because they said that they're not, like, definitely for sure. Because they said that we're not, but we once were.
Yeah, and incredible, I guess, also has connotations of being something that's really really excellent. So wow, that's really incredible. That's really, really great. That's really excellent. And black people are not usually in a system of racism, white supremacy. We're not usually associated with being incredible in that type of sense, if that's a different type of connotation of the word incredible. So I don't know. In answer to your question, I'm not really sure if we're looked upon as incredible or not.
To me, it seems obvious that we're not credible due to the way we get treated. Like, it seems obvious when you read that definition. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like a punch in the gut.
Thank you, everyone, for their input. So this next word is a fascinating concept, and white people have definitely have made it our reality, unfortunately. So the word here, again, page 61, is transvestite. And I'm just going to read the whole definition because it's not too long. And after I read it, I'm going to show some images and a video, so we'll know what is. So the images will show you better than I can tell you, or Khari Enaharo can tell you. So transvestite. This word has become associated with Black males, particularly in the last few years. When this term was originally used, it was associated widely with the behavior and lifestyle of white homosexuals. Actually, let me maybe play the video while I read it, because yeah, I'm gonna do that. Sure.
05, would you like someone to read while you show the images?
I can finish.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, though. When this term was originally used, it was associated widely with the behavior and lifestyle of white homosexuals. However, in the last few years, this word has come to mean Black men dressing up as females and imitating white females. They are trying to resemble white women. They do not dress like Black women in other parts of the world. They do not dress in Black rap or other culturally based Black garments. They dress like Greta Garbo, Marilyn Monroe, and so forth. The white supremacist desires to put Black men in dresses to reduce their manhood so that they become less of a threat. This is part of the reason for the explosion of Black males in drag. Black men that dress as females have been allowed to star in television shows, appear in movies, and become big-time celebrities. So on the screen, you'll see this playing out in plain sight. And we'll see in these images here, just average day Black people who have gotten the message that if you want to be treated better, dress like a white female, dress in drag, do not pretend like you are a man. Most certainly don't even look like a male. So this is the reality of being under the system of white supremacy for as long as we've been under it. It has ruined the psyche of millions of Black males, I suspect, and this is the result. Something happened. So these aren't celebrities. These are your average day Black people who got the message that if you want to be treated better, pretend to be a female. Anything but a male, Black male. And it's getting to the point where if you're a black male and you're not attracted to males, or you don't want to have any sexual engagements with black males pretending to be females, then you can be called many incorrect words. But it just goes to show you the acute insanity that has been perpetuated against us and has been spread amongst us from the white supremacists, racist man, racist woman. So yeah, this is very telling of what has been done to the black male psyche. And black females also are in the same position. Some of them have chosen to not be black females and will rather pretend to be black males. And it's for the same reason, due to the system of white supremacy, racism. Any comments on this?
Hello, this is Kwaku. To start off, I'll start off with the word transvestite. For me, I heard that word like pretty young. I want to say I was in grade school in Ghana at the time, but it was often I always thought it was referring to somebody who I guess now is considered intersex. So somebody who has both male and female genitalia, was born with it. So that's what I thought transvestite was. So, when I guess trans people started becoming more prominent, I've never really even heard anyone refer to a trans person as a transvestite. It's usually just trans. So I don't, if Ray's got the definition for transvestite, if that's in the dictionary, I'd love to hear it. But that I guess that was the time when I heard that word. I never really associated with men dressing as females, but I think one of the parts that was kind of very I don't want to say eye-opening, but very surprising to me was when he said that they're black males trying to dress as white females, and that was something I guess I hadn't really paid attention to, because oftentimes when you're talking about these trans people, they're oftentimes talking about how these wannabe females are imitating black females. But given the images that you showed, and kind of I guess more of the reality of it is that these are black males attempting to act like white females.
But I think like black females are attempting to be white females. So it could be that they're doing what they see black females do, or it could be that they want to be white females. You know what I mean? Because it's not like black females are also doing their hair to look like white celebrities.
One of the most famous movies to come out of black people's creation it's a movie called White Chicks, and that movie is very telling on to the system of white supremacy. Ray, would you like to chime in?
Yes, I was just going to read the definition of transvestite, and this is what I was familiar with also, but there is a litany of confusion around the prefix trans. But the definition is a person who derives sexual pleasure from dressing in the clothes of the opposite sex.
Maybe for a counter-racist logic perspective would be replacing the pleasure with comfort, because black people have been allowed comfort when they put on these dresses, have been allowed more trinkets when they put on these dresses. So really interesting.
I don't want to dwell on this too much, but see that when I hear that definition, I imagine someone who would be considered a cross-dresser, so I feel like it's still not connecting for me.
And
but I understand the intentions of using the word.
Yeah, I understand that white people you can also find a ton of images of white people in dresses, but understanding that people who are classified as white are very, very different from people who have been classified as Black. So a ton of white people, that definition, I'm sure it fits for them. You know, a ton of white people, whether in secret or publicly, derive sexual pleasure or good feelings from dressing up as a female or whatever. But this sort of thinking has been incorrectly given to non-white people, and it has done nothing at all to get us closer to a system of justice or to even get us thinking seriously about racism and white supremacy. Any more comments?
Yeah, just on what you said there, 05. That's exactly what I thought of as well. It's like anything that we do that is going to take focus away from racist man and racist woman, then we'll be encouraged to do it. So I remember Dr. Welsing ages ago talking about the question, how do we take power away from the big house, right? And anything to distract us away from asking that question is definitely going to be encouraged. And what better way to convince non-white people that being part of the so-called, I don't know, LGBTQ community or being a transvestite or a trans person is the most important thing in our lives, right? So much to the extent of, if you talk about anything to do with getting rid of racism, some people in that community then start switching the conversation around to trans issues or etc. etc. So anything that takes focus away from how do we take power away from the big house, as Dr. Welsing puts it, is encouraged.
Thank you, Mr. Damages. I hope that was able to clear up some confusion that maybe some of us may be having. Any more comments regarding this phenomenon of transvestites? I really appreciate Khari Enaharo's decoding of this word, because I
have something I wanted to say.
Like Kwaku also thought that this meant like being burned like a hermaphrodite or something like that, but no, it just means something entirely different. Go ahead, Mr. Sid.
I agree with everything that's been said. I do think if you practice this behavior, you will be rewarded by the system of racism, white supremacy. And also, I do see it as an attack on the potential ability for Black males to reproduce and repopulate the planet with people who are classified as Black.
So sad. So the next word has become just so attached to Black people, and it has even become like a something comedic. You know, so you could get a lot of laughs for talking about this phrase, which is crack baby, and the definition is really short. It says the term is applied to Black children who are born victims of the chemical conspiracy. This term condemns little Black children to a life of abuse. It also justifies the actions of some to push the concept of sterilization of Black and non-white people. And instead of saying chemical conspiracy, I would have said chemical terrorism, warfare against Black people that is known as the so-called crack epidemic, which is just white people flooding Black areas with crack and sabotaging us. I'm gonna play a little bit of this news broadcast from some time ago, and just listen to how the white woman describes what's happening, and then we'll try to decode what she's saying.
There's no sound.
Thank you for telling me. Let me get some sound on here.
Baby can die.
There's a whole lot of people who feel that if you can just scare people sufficiently about something, that's better than actually telling them the truth about something, because that'll prevent them from doing bad things.
The American agenda tonight poses this question. What would you do about pregnant women who use drugs and pass those drugs on to their babies?
By the late 1980s, Chasnoff's findings were being used to justify cases charging pregnant cocaine users as child abusers, drug dealers, and killers.
I was at first stunned and then angry that they would distort the information. That's when I started realizing how a lot of this can be taken out of context and used to bolster any kind of argument.
People may have felt that they were doing the right thing, but I mean, the idea that one would prosecute a pregnant woman and use this kind of not very accurate research to do so is very disturbing.
As the prosecutions continued, crack babies grew to toddlers.
No one knows how many there are, or even how best to identify them. But educators suspect that tens of thousands of crack kids are in kindergartens in inner cities, in suburbia, even in small-town America.
It now threatens to create an entirely new underclass of children unable to care for themselves, of infants born to suffer.
So many race code words in this broadcast. I'm just gonna I'll see what folks have to say before I chime in. Actually.
Yeah, I have to say, because while they're like, oh, it's hard to identify them, they have Black children just walking around, and all the scenes are Black children. Yet they're talking about, oh, it's hard to identify them or recognize them. We don't know who they are. There's just Black images of Black children. So
I hope everyone noticed that when the white woman was talking about how could anyone prosecute a pregnant mother, notice that it was a crying white woman on the screen when they said that. Mr. /0, would you like to chime in?
Yes, that's very tacky. Is that George Bush Sr. right there on the screen?
I believe it is.
Yeah, it caused the problem, and now he's coddling the little crack baby. Yes, there is a definition for crack baby, and it is an infant typically born prematurely with a condition caused by the excessive consumption of crack cocaine by the mother during pregnancy and characterized by malformations and learning disabilities. They created the problem, and they will define it.
Yes, 100%. You know, they wound us, destroy us, and then they come in as saviors in order to feel good. It's just a really psychopathic way that they practice racism, white supremacy, and what? Oh yeah, I heard inner city. That's a race code word, and this section we'll be covering soon. But yeah, this sabotage, chemical warfare, known as crack cocaine. I was affected by this. Not saying I'm a crack baby, but I grew up in South Central LA, and I was very familiar with people doing crack and what that results of. It results in an environment where it's full of incorrect things happening, to say the least. So this has affected I don't know how many generations. I know I'm a part of the generation affected by the sabotage, chemical warfare that white people have done to Black people while calling it a crack epidemic. So really, really telling of the terroristic system that we are living under, and should be one of the infinite motivating factors why non-white people, especially Black people, begin to get serious about countering this problem.
I believe that, I feel like I remember reading somewhere that it's not a real thing as well. Like, they're actually, if I remember that I think that, yes, the babies can be born prematurely, but that's from a multitude of things, like smoking cigarettes, eating poorly, or just having stress in general, which I think that if someone's doing crack while pregnant is probably maybe engaging in those behaviors as well. Or also just living in an environment where there's a lot of violence. But I also think this is really interesting because, you know, like, actually when you give birth, when you do opioids and you give birth, your child will actually be like addicted to opioids, like heroin, etc. More drugs that have been recently, I guess, found that more white people do, which I think is really interesting because it's very unlikely for your child to be born addicted to crack, but I don't see any like opioid baby crisis that they're talking about. And I think that this is all just a ploy for more child trafficking through DPSS. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, and that was someone that was discussed here. The doctor, two of these doctors, they were appalled how their research was skewed because this concept of a crack baby is actually a white concept. There's no true scientific backing that states that crack baby is a thing. More so, they're born prematurely, but that can be a result of like a polluted environment. The victim parents living in an environment full of chaos and trauma. So it can be a lot of things, but this the adding drugs to the mix was just a way, as Khari Enaharo says, to justify further mistreatment of Black people. Locking away Black mothers and victim fathers. That is a form of sterilization. And right here it says it justifies the actions of some to push the concept of sterilization of Black and non-white people. If you're locking large numbers of Black people up for a problem you solve, I see that as a form of sterilization. So it's just really tacky, trashy, terroristic, to say the very least.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have heard the term, just to add on to what was said already, I've heard the term meth baby, which is associated with white people who sometimes being addicted to opioids and meth, etc. But it doesn't have the same connotations because obviously white people are not victims of racism, white supremacy. So, they don't, and that's why they treat white people who are drug addicted differently, obviously, to Black people who may be addicted to drugs. And regards to the video that you played as well, when the white woman in there, when she was saying people may have felt that they were doing the right thing in terms of dealing with the so-called crack epidemic, when she said people may have felt they were doing the right thing, I suspect she meant white people may have felt that they were doing the right thing, but then she didn't just want to come out and say white people. But I suspect that that's what she meant. In other words, she was trying to give white people, racist man and racist woman, an out for creating the problem and dealing with the problem in a racist way.
Excellently put.
I was
almost. Oh, go ahead, Ray. Sorry.
I was also just gonna piggyback off of Ashley's thought and the video clip, how they were saying no one really knows how many are out there, but you would know the data from the hospital because the children would be addicted to the drug. So you would know exactly how many are out there and how many people you're servicing, or does this really exist or not,
And something that I noticed too from the video is it almost sounds like a trailer for like a movie about like a zombie apocalypse or something. Like this idea that it's just these crack addicted children and who knows what happens when they become toddlers and adolescents. This idea that like Black people have this super human strength and are brutes, and if they're addicted to crack, then they're even going to have extra strength. The idea that like people on PCP like become superheroes in their mind and they act super violent. So it really just read to me as like the way that when they were showing the news clips, like it was like people talking about an invasion of some sort of creature or zombie or alien or something.
Amazing contribution of words, Miss Ash. That was really well put. I felt the same way. Mr. Sir, you'd like to chime in?
Yes. This was a really fascinating clip. Very racist, I would say as well. Someone already mentioned that whenever they mention crack babies. They don't know where they are, where they come from, whatever. You see all these little black girls and these black boys running around the playground. I thought that was really interesting. And I've seen firsthand what crack does to black people. It really is a devastating drug, and I think it did a good job at putting black males and black females by the millions in some form of confinement, whether it be addicted to drugs or in a actual jail or prison. I also did. I feel like it also led to a lot of killings because black males and black females would kill each other over places to produce and sell crack. So it's just really terrible. I remember hearing stories about some of my uncles finding trains full of containers full of crack cocaine and M16s and assault rifles. So these things were just trafficked right into places like Compton and South Central LA, I believe. That's what I've heard by people who were involved in the war on drugs. So, whatever that means.
Now, Gary Webb, white man attempted to shed some truth on where these drugs were coming from. They're coming from white people. White people are the only people who have the power to bring drugs into this so-called country. So Gary Webb, white man, sacrificed by other white people because of the truth he attempted to share. So, yep. Any more comments on this racist concept known as crack baby, crack epidemic? All right, wonderful.
Just one last comment. I remember in either elementary or middle school, we used to joke around. I'm not sure if I joked around, but I know it was just commonly said, like, "Oh, you're a crack baby." I'm not sure if anyone else heard of that, but it was very common that someone would call you, like, if you did something, that you're a crack baby, and they would laugh and it would be a joke.
It was at my school.
Yeah, I think that falls right in there with ghetto glorification, the name calling bit. You're a crackhead. Your mama a crackhead. You look like a crackhead. Yeah, black children have definitely been programmed to exert such comments towards one another, and it didn't do black people any favors with the victim of racism, Dave Chappelle,
In the United States,
creating the iconic character of Tyrone Biggums, who is a super powered crackhead, and I'm sure white people love that concept, and it is forever immortalized tragically. So, yep.
Also, the South Park episode has a interesting episode on the crack babies playing basketball, actually. So very interesting, the sport that they were playing in that episode.
Yeah, I remember that clip. Yeah, so the damage has been very severe. The people who are doing the damage are people who classify themselves as white, racist men and racist women. So, did anyone have any notes they want to share on ethic? Have any bits they wanted to read?
You released 100.
I have some if no one else has any notes. I was looking at the definition of ethnic, and it said non-Jews and NT, had the letters NT. And so I did research on what NT meant, and it could mean either New Testament, Northern Territory, Northwest Territories, and that got me to thinking about the Northwestern Front. But before I get into that, the definition of ethnic is heathen. That was the first definition, just that one word, heathen. Number two, designating or of a population subgroup having a common cultural heritage or nationality as distinguished by customs, characteristics, language, common history, etc. And then the next word under that was ethnic cleansing, which is the systemic attempt to eliminate an ethnic group from a country or region as by force, expulsion, or mass execution. Now, getting back to the first definition, I was saying that the Northern Territory, Northwest Territories reminded me of a term that I had heard, which was Northwestern Front. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with that, but the Northwestern Front is a white separatist idea that has been popularized since the 70s and 80s by white nationalists, white supremacists, white separatists, and neo-Nazi groups within the United States. According to it, members of these groups are encouraged to relocate to a region of the northwestern United States, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and western Montana, with the intent to eventually declare the region an Aryan white ethno-state. Depending on who defines the project, it can also include the entire states of Montana, Wyoming, plus Northern California, Okay, several reasons have been given for activists choosing this area to be a future white homeland. It is farther removed from Black and other minority locations than other areas of the United States are. It is geographically remote, making it harder for the federal government to uproot activists. Its wide open spaces appeal to those who believe in the right to hunt and fish without any government regulations, and it would give them access to seaports in Canada. So that's just what that one word ethnic led me to.
That reminds me of Yurugu, ethnic, when it's coming from the words of white people usually means non-white, or they are attempting to eliminate the non-white people or remove them from certain areas. I'm going to read a bit of the race code word decoding of this word because it's very accurate, I suspect. On page 62, it says, the term ethnic is another old word in new bottles that define race in different contexts. The word has gathered steam on the supermarket shelves. It started being used to identify hair care products and other related items. It defines an area in the store that sells products for Black people, usually clothing or hair care items. This is very interesting because most hair care products are geared towards the development of a better white look. The ethnic word is a code word, is code for if you want to look Black, or if you are Black, you should try this product. It is another way of saying Black without dealing with the baggage of racism that it's attached to. In the world of pornography, for example, the word ethnic does not sell. They openly use the term Black or African Americans as part of their marketing approach. The word ethnic is a soft racial marketing code word to make Black products more acceptable and tolerable to white consumers. Dr. Francis Krasbosing writes that many white people really do not like their skin color and will risk their health to get darker skin pigmentation. So I see this word ethnic as a just a code word. If you don't want to say Black, if you have been victimized to such a degree where you don't use the word Black, you rather use African American or those sort of those phrases. I'm gonna play a clip later when we're talking about property value, but the Black female, she has been victimized to such a degree where it seems like it's hard for her to even say Black. She uses the word ethnic. So very telling of what has been done to our psyche and our thinking capabilities, to say the least. And I'm sure we're all familiar with this. We go into Target, and like they have all the Black stuff, so-called Black stuff, all in one area, and this is by design, and I really appreciate him saying that this is very interesting because most hair care products are geared towards the development of a better white look. And you go to a lot of Black females and Black males go to this beauty supply to get various items that make them look whiter, light up their skin or straighten up their hair. So very, very telling, very well sophisticated usage of this word by white people. There's a ton more on this word, but that's why I recommend everyone getting a copy of Race Code War, so you can read the definitions we don't cover and read the portions that we don't cover as well, because this book, these concepts should be understood by all victims of racism. Any more comments?
I was going to say that anytime I've ever heard the term ethnic by anybody, right, non-white people and white people, it's always resulted in a ball of confusion for me, just confusion on top of confusion. I don't understand what anyone means when they use the word. Anytime I ask someone to define what they mean when they use the word ethnic to describe themselves, if they ask me, for example, what's your ethnicity? They don't even understand what they mean when they ask me the question, right? It's, as far as I know, ethnicity is not a racial classification. And yeah, it's just confusion on top of confusion. And like I said, I would encourage anyone that hears that word out of anybody's mouths, just ask them what they mean when they say ethnic. And I bet you the person won't actually be able to explain to you what they mean when they ask you about your ethnicity. In terms of like a part of the definition that Ray used, I mean, if it's about a people or a culture, what they say, or a language, there's many people that come from a region, a particular region, and they don't even have the same language, and they don't even have the same quote unquote culture. They don't eat the same food either. So yeah, that word just sounds like, yeah, it's just another word made up by white supremacists. You know, they make up words all the time. They don't really mean anything. It just means anything. It just means what they want it to mean at the time when they're using it. So yeah, it's just a confusing term.
It reminds me of ethnic studies. I remember like people in my college, like they were in the ethnic studies program, and I think they said that they started the program, and it was like I guess like a bunch of non-white people fought for the program, and it was called, at first it was called Third World Studies, but then eventually, like, as and the program was supposed to be like, I guess, run by non-white people, but as time went on, it ended up being a program where it was basically a lot of white professors teaching other white people about non-white people's history. So I thought that was really interesting, because I think ethnic studies adds a really vagueness to it, that like if you say someone got a degree in ethnic studies, like what does that really mean? Like I can understand if someone got a degree in like African American studies, even though I don't know if that's the best word to use, but ethnic studies doesn't, yeah, I think that's an interesting word.
Yeah, I just see it as ethnic non-white, non-white studies. When someone asks you your ethnicity, I suspect they're trying to say what kind of non-white person are you. But yeah, just going back to what Dahmer just said, to just best to not use the word when others use it. Ask for a definition. What do you mean by ethnicity? Or what do you mean you like ethnic food? You like non-white food? You like food made by people who are not classified as white? Definitely a rabbit hole one can be lost in if they don't ask for definitions regarding this word. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
No, are we going in order, or can I read something from a different definition?
Yeah, I'm going in order, but folks can share whatever, whenever.
All right, because I didn't hear anything on cannibal. So let me read this. I'm gonna read this and then talk a bit about it. Cannibal. This is an old code word for black men in the jungle. When this word is used, it is always a subtle or overt reference to an uncivilized black population. There are many sources of this word association, from Tarzan the Ape Man books and movies to songs like In the Jungle, which symbolize conquering the savages of Africa and civilizing them enough to function as semi-human beings. So I'm not gonna read more of it, but it's interesting that black people are classified as cannibals, even though there's like so much media presence and that involves white males and white females engaging in cannibalistic acts. There's famous films that involve white cannibals, such as the Hannibal Lecter TV show, the Red Dragon film, Silence of the Lambs, that involves the same character, famous white male who travels the world eating eyeballs and eating white women and white males. And it's just and then the propaganda always associates non-white people with being cannibals, such as the film The Man Not. And there's so much propaganda that involves black people, black males in particular, being these savage creatures who go around eating people. And it's untrue. And the real people who are actual cannibals are the non-black people and the white people. For example, I just watched a video of a Asian man who ate a white female, and he killed her in Tokyo and ate her, and then he was able to get away with it because he was extradited back to China or wherever he was from, and he was able to escape capture, and now he writes books about it. So I've never seen also Jeffrey Dahmer, the famous white cannibal who would primarily target black males and do these operations on them where he would drill a hole into their brains and then pour acid into it so they would be comatose, and then he would eat them and have pieces of their penises in his refrigerator. So the real cannibals are the Yurugu, the white people. Just getting that out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a recent case. I know Damages is very familiar with it, and then please chime in on that white man who was drugging black people or raping them. That's also a form of cannibalism, cannibalistic behavior. On top of the whole book, The Delectable Negro could give you tons of insight into how white people have a tradition, a history of eating non-white people, especially black people. And notice when I type in cannibal, you see a bunch of primitive-looking non-white people. But this behavior has been done by white people, and it's glorified by white people, celebrated by white people. Mr. Downs, if you could share some information on that individual. I can't recall his name, but I think you may be able to.
Yeah, I think maybe you're talking about Ed Buck, probably that recent one, the recent guy that, well-known, Democratic Party funder, etc. Yeah, numerous black victims. That's and important to recognize as well. Straight males and gay males that he killed, drugged and killed. He did untold things to those black males. There's also lots and lots of document. Oh, Ronald Dominique as well. I'd encourage people to go and check out Ronald Dominique, another serial killer who exclusively targeted black men. Also, let me see. There was obviously there's some documented evidence as well of white people eating slaves as well. And I remember when I first heard that, and I thought, no, that can't be real. Maybe they didn't do that, but they actually did. White people. There's documented evidence of white people actually eating slaves. That's just that just doesn't even bear thinking about sometimes. And also, there's one of
Damages, you cut out.
famous killers, serial killers, Cannibal. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got cut off there for a second there. Yeah, and I was going to say also Andrei Chikatilo, who's one of the most famous Russian serial killers. And I can't remember the exact figure, but I know
around 70,
it was definitely, I think it was definitely more than 50 people he ate, right? So there's lots and lots and lots of evidence of white people engaging in cannibalism. So really, when they're associated with us, that's just projection. And actually, there's a really good film on Andrei Chikatilo, which I'd urge everybody to go and check out. It's called Citizen X, and it's an excellent film. Excellent film that details on the crimes of Andrei Chikatilo. And like I said, there's just two. We could go on all day about white people eating people, right? So much documented evidence to support that. So yeah, when they associate that with non-white people, that's just simple projection.
Yeah. That actually is how I got started in attempting to counter racism. The Delectable Negro. I heard some snippets from the Cows Context of White Supremacy show, and I was like, let me read it for myself. Bought the book, The Delectable Negro, and discovered that white people, again, have a long tradition, history, behavior pattern of eating Black people. And then this is, that's all the encouragement I needed to want to eliminate this problem ASAP, because they're still doing it. It just manifests in different ways. And if not, it manifests just simply as them eating us. So very telling. Thank you. We will be doing the decoding of Citizen X in the future. For folks who want to participate from the YouTube stream, just send me an email. Mr. Ray, 50.
Yes, I understand how difficult it must be for Black people to hear that white people are supreme cannibals. And if you look in their own documented history, I'm reading now from the Smithsonian Magazine, white people ate each other when they came over to this part of the world in order to get through winter. Okay, by the winter of 1609, extreme drought, hostile relations with members of the local Powhatan Confederacy, and the fact that a supply ship was lost at sea put the colonists in a truly desperate position. 16 years later, in 1625, George Percy, who had been president of Jamestown during the starving time, wrote a letter describing the colonists' diet during that terrible winter. Having fed upon our horses and other beasts as long as they lasted, we were glad to make shift with vermin as dogs, cats, rats, and mice, as to eat boots, shoes, or any other leather. Wealthy moment. And now famine beginning to look ghastly and pale in every face, that nothing was spread to maintain life. Now, mind you, this is written in the 1600s, so, they spoke a different way. So, all right. And now famine beginning to look ghastly and pale in every face, that nothing was spared to maintain life, and to do those things which seem incredible, as to dig up dead corpses out of graves and to eat them, and some have licked up the blood which hath fallen from their weak fellows. I'll mute my line.
Yeah, telling example of what are we dealing with when we are talking about people who classify themselves as white. This is one of the infinite reasons why every white person should be known as a suspected racist, someone potentially very dangerous, very insidious, and with nefarious intent. So every white person is a racist suspect until the system has been eliminated, because you never know who can be planning on eating you, who can be thinking about eating you or harming you or practicing deception against you. So Neelyfoot Jr., every single white person is a suspected racist until the system has been eliminated. One way to not be ate by a white person. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sir, for your bringing us to this discussion. So the next word here on page 64 is white collar criminal. Let's actually see what comes up when I put this on the Google, racist Google search.
Before you get into this white collar criminal, kind of reminds me of the ambulance trailer with, I believe his name is Jake Gyllenhaal. Would that be considered a white collar crime?
Yep, that's definitely like the level of crime that requires resources that Black people often do not have. So I'm going to read a little bit here. Let me see. All right, I'm just going to read I'm going to read the first paragraph and a sentence from the third paragraph. White collar criminal. This is the code phrase generally reserved for white male criminal activity. A white collar crime means a sophisticated criminal act that requires great thinking, organizational skills, and mental concentration. The white collar and the white shirt are color-coded symbols of white superiority and power. The white collar crime is considered the stuff of glamour criminals and the theme of glossy movies. The white collar criminal is praised and glorified. And decoded color and racial language, the white collar represents the white mindset, the white way of doing things, and white people. Skipping a little bit, the majority of so-called white collar workers were white, quiet, dedicated, and intelligent. So think of someone like Bernie Madoff, who is often called like the greatest con, the greatest schemer in history. He stole about $65 billion from white people and from non-white people worldwide. And they still make movies about him. I'm pretty sure there's a recent Frontline episode about him. And this happened many, many years ago. Think of the movie Wolf of Wall Street, a movie that celebrates white collar criminal activity, which is white psychopathic behavior and glamorizes it. You think of The Big Short, another movie that shows white criminals stealing and causing so much devastation for their own kind, and of course non-white people. So this is very accurate. White people, not only do they mostly always get away with these sort of white collar crimes, so-called, but then again, they're gonna be movies made of it as well. So not only are they punished, they are glorified and worshiped. So it just goes to show that if you're white, you can pretty much do anything and get away with anything. And he also goes into more decoding of the workplace environment and just the colors that are worn during workplace situations. But this is why I recommend people buying the book, because I didn't have any notes on that. Comments?
It actually reminded me of the television show Dexter, how they turned a serial killer and made what he was doing look like it was a white collar crime by how so contained he was while doing the crime. And I also agree that a lot of white males and white females get away with so much fraud, so much scam, so much, just so much. And when they do get caught, it's often a light sentence, or they'll have their charges reduced. For example, let's say a white person kills someone, and they sometimes are able to manipulate the system or use their white power to have their first degree murder charge reduced to manslaughter, stuff like that. And also having the contacts and the intelligence to be able to become a Bernie Madoff and have a pyramid scheme and scams millions of dollars from people and not be killed and go to jail and then be able to come out and then write books about it and whatnot. I'm not sure what happened to Bernie Madoff, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that he didn't do or will do. They're already making films and TV shows about him.
Yeah, the Wolf of Wall Street guy, that's what happened to him. He scammed millions of dollars from people, went to prison, came out of prison. Now he's still has white power. He's making money talking about how he scammed people and is so-called a motivational speaker, not motivating people to solve the race problem, just motivating people to become like him, scammers, and practice deception. Charming deception is how white people have been able to get as far as they've gotten, because we don't suspect them. We think they're charming, nice, trustworthy people, when in actuality they are nefarious, deceptive individuals who choose to classify themselves as white. So this is very, very important text here, because we need to know the information. We need to understand the white power and powerless dynamic that we are in, because until we have the courage and the will to call it what it is and understand white people are nothing more than suspected racists, who are only worthy of our suspicion, not our worship or our praise, which we spend too much time giving them. But yeah, I hope this information comes across many victims who are able to understand that they have been sabotaged, they have been victimized to a degree unlike no other.
Hello, this is Kwaku. For me, the white collar criminal, the section that kind of, I guess, resonated with me was the part about the workplace and the white shirt specifically. I'm just gonna read that real quick. The bottom of 64, top of 65. It says the white shirt gives a black male a feeling of being restricted, controlled, and contained within a false social identity. When the black male puts on a white shirt, he is in full uniform and ready to play the game according to the white male's rules. This is a daily mental manipulation that has very little to do with physically wearing a shirt. With the growth of a new workforce of varying colors, the white shirt look had to change. And then kind of skipping, the so-called business casual looks have more to do with the invasion of the colored work.
Can I be heard? My headphones died. Oh.
Loud and clear.
The so-called business casual looks have more to do with the invasion of the colored workforce than a productivity motivation scheme. So specifically the white shirt, I've always felt a certain way about white shirt, ties, the suit. I've always disliked them, mainly because it seems like Urugu clothing and culture, in my opinion. So I thought it was very interesting how he brought up that when he was talking about white collar crime, and then how all of these, I guess a lot of institutions now they have moved more to a business casual look, which is just, you know, a long, it can be any kind of, it has to be a button up without a tie, anything like that. How they've moved towards that to, I guess, accommodate victims of racism to make them feel more welcomed into the institution. And I also liked how he mentioned toward the bottom of 65, the message of white supremacy is taking a different course and concentration, at least temporarily, which is something that I agree with, and I've seen, especially with these diversity inclusion initiatives that we keep hearing about, that white supremacy is only taking a different course for, you know, temporary reasons. But I suspect that no matter how many non-white people you get in the workplace, this kind of white collar criminal activity will continue. And just like it's been going on before, many non-white people will be confused about it and or be unaware of it.
Precisely.
No, go ahead.
I had took some notes on that too on page 65 on the where it says the dress down look is either darker in color, as in jeans, sweatshirts, and or looser fitting clothes, similar in style but not in color to traditional African or non-white clothing. Notice the evolution of the term dress at the time when more color is worn in the workplace. Period. This so-called trendy designer look, which is code for white people, shows the direct influence of colored people on the psyche of white people. And I had just noted that, like, yeah, we have to dress nicer when white people are around, but on the regular, like every day, we get to wear like whatever we want to wear. But when the white people are around, make sure that you dress spiffy and nice for sure.
Mr. Damages and Ray.
Yeah, the term white collar criminal, when I first heard that term years and years ago, and recently, even like I said, like today when I was trying to take some notes on white collar criminal, the phrase, I was just thinking of Neely Fuller Jr. when he said, you know, word masters, like real word masters. This term white collar criminal, I suspect that white people made up this term, racist man or racist woman made up this term to distract away from and dissociate themselves away from their savagery, right? Their savagery when they commit crimes. So then now they only want to be associated with things that, I don't know, embezzlement, things, financial crime, money laundering, and things like that. They don't want to be associated with their savagery, right? But, you know, white people, it's just true that white people commit all different types of crime. I mean, is plantation slavery considered white collar crime? Is, you know, Tasmania white collar crime? Congo? What they're doing in Palestine, is that white collar crime? Why is it even being given a collar, right? A collar as opposed to a collar, but, you know, blue collar crime, white collar crime. It's just a confusing term anytime I hear it. And, you know, obviously black people, it's associated with sophisticated crime, right? And black people are not considered to be sophisticated by racist man and racist woman. So we're considered to be stupid, obviously silly, brick for brains, etc. So if we commit a crime, then we're just evil, you know, we're just straight from hell. Hannibal Lecter, like other people have said already, that you know, Hannibal Lecter couldn't have been a black person, which we should study or puzzle over, you know, that FBI agents like in Silence of the Lambs would go to help to solve murders, etc. No. This is just a nigger who's crazy who killed people, right? So, you know, this nigga is just crazy, evil, kill him, you know, who cares what he has to say? That's why people just trying to disassociate themselves with their own savagery when committing crimes.
Yeah. That's why he mentions there's street crime, which is AKA nigger crimes non-white people are led to, and there's white collar crime, which is done by racist men and racist women. Mr. Ray and then Ms. Naya.
Yes, I just wanted to go over the definition of white. One of the definitions are free from evil, intent, relatively harmless. This next definition reminded me of an earlier broadcast with Khari, having a light colored skin, Caucasoids, great notions of racial superiority. Now, this next definition is allegedly in a different context, a member of a reactionary or counter-revolutionary faction, happy, fortunate, auspicious, said of the times and seasons. Now, thinking of the white collar, those are usually white people, and then you get into the blue collar, which, you know, blue collar workers are usually black people, and black people have also been referred to as blue black, if I'm not mistaken. But on page 65, what stuck out to me, they have now moved away from the white shirt look so prevalent once in major white dominated corporations such as the IBM company. The new look is confusing and misdirecting. The clothing pattern does not seem to have a sense of organization or purpose. Is this an attempt to misdirect the non-white masses? Is this an effort to make them believe that the atmosphere is more tolerant of their existence and more open to their growth and development? Is this a way to accommodate and manipulate the colored workforce by creating a greater variation of color in the workplace? And that just got me to thinking of a so-called prominent black male who goes by the initials of KS, who was a high-paying employee of IBM and now talks about high-value men, which my definition of a high-value male is a high-value man, is a black male attempting universal manhood. I'll mute my line.
Naya?
Yes, just to add to that, one of the things I could not help to think is that when I read the whole white uniform thing, I really just thought about when I watched movies and it was in like how mental health patients, if they go into like an institution, A straight jacket, it's like white, and then especially when it said the phrase, let me read it. It says, the white shirt gives a black male a feeling of being restricted, controlled, and contained within a false social identity. When the black male puts on a white shirt, he is in full uniform and ready to play the game according to the white male's rules. And I couldn't help but just think of like mental institutions. And when they need to be contained or they to be in control, they put them in like straight jackets, and then the symbolization of them being white, especially within like TV shows or television.
Wow, thank you, Mr. Ray, Miss Naya. I'm gonna read some things from the chat before we get too far away from it. From Helen B, war on drugs, AKA war on non-white people. Very, very correct. And we have here from Still Learning, he says, cannibal, the story of vampires is the story of white cannibalism, very accurate. White collar criminal equals higher intellect than blue collar criminal or thug. The most effective criminals in the world wear suits, ties, or skirt sets. And that is very, very accurate. You know, white people have a history of putting on suits and dominating the planet, essentially. The CIA synonymous with the suit and ties, and also synonymous with worldwide sabotage of non-white people, Black people. So very, very correct. And another comment from Still Learning. Definitely Yurugu clothing culture. I can't stand it, but there are no Black designers of men's clothing to compete in the business of casual market. I suspect racial and white supremacy keeps Black designers out. I suspect the same as well. And the final comment is ethnic clothing, it's non-white clothing, I suspect, is distracting to white people and could signal to other non-white people a growth in consciousness, rejection of expectations, and reduction in fear, all of which scare white people. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, which is why you will probably not see any Black people wearing so-called traditional African non-white clothing in the workplace. It's just too so-called taboo. It will just get white people nervous, and white people get nervous when they see Black people not that much assimilated into their system with their clothing. So it makes a lot of sense. You know, I'm pretty sure just the sight of a Black male, such as myself, with locks in their hair and facial hair is already intimidating. So very, very accurate, I suspect. Any more comments from the panel?
When I think of white collar crime, I think of white men, but let's not forget white women. Let's not forget their wives. Do you not think that they are part, or that they're ignorant to what their white husbands are doing? No, I don't think so. And also how when they do the so-called perp walk, how they're allowed to cover their head or to cover the handcuffs, be handcuffed in front of them, in front instead of behind their backs, have a jacket or something thrown over the handcuffs. And also how they're able to benefit, which was mentioned earlier, but how when they commit a crime, and if they do a little time, if they go to greater confinement, they are allowed to come out and still make money. Sometimes they're still able to make money while they're in jail. And there's a movie called Catch Me If You Can by with Tom Hanks. That story was also about a white man who counterfeit money, and later on he went to jail for a little while, but later on he was able to work with the FBI, the government, or something of that nature. I mute my mic.
Yeah, and Martha Stewart, went to jail for so-called white collar criminal activity, and got out of jail. She's doing fine, hanging out with Snoop Dogg, probably smoking weed with Snoop Dogg. So yeah, that is correct. And oftentimes these white criminals are given the luxury and have the power to, just wear their suits inside, the court proceedings and whatnot, to not be viewed as a criminal. But that's super rare for Black people, non-white people, to have that same that luxury. We are often just go to the court proceedings with the yellow orange jumpsuit or whatever, and that already from the jury perspective, it seems to already view them as guilty. So yeah, this very, very evident in the imbalance of power, meaning white people have all the power and Black people have none of it. So it makes sense when you what Helen B said, when you see white people who are being charged with something or are being taken into the custody. I always thought that too. Like, why? How come the handcuffs are in the front? Dylan Roof, they gave him a bulletproof vest. Took him to Burger King. So it's just really telling of the kind of world we're living in, and Black people should we should be out of the limits. We should be willing to do what needs to be done to solve this problem ASAP. Any more comments from folks? Alrighty, so the next word is a highly dangerous, contagious word that has been used to create an illusion that things are getting better, or Black people are now a part of the conversation or a part of the society, and that word is diversity. And it's on page 66. Diversity, this is the code word that replaces the use of coded terms like racial, color, integration, and equal opportunity. It simply means that Black people are now needed to sit deeper in the window in order to give the illusion of inclusion. This entails the visible level of non-white involvement in the project, company, or development scheme to make non-whites believe that they enjoy active participation. And I've heard this term, white people have attempted to use the diversity term against me by saying, we just need more diversity. And oftentimes when I responded with how is diversity gonna correct the problem of race and white supremacy, I've 100% of the time had met silence. So diversity is just, a code word, doesn't mean anything of value. It's just the way they've been putting, I wouldn't say salt on the wound, because it hasn't made anything better at all. So we maybe were in a better position when we weren't in such close proximity to white people, but now all of the diversity, we have people, Black people trust white people more now than ever, I suspect. Back in the so-called segregated era, we knew white people were out killing us, lynching us, raping us. More Black people were aware of that. But here in 2021, we got Black people dancing with white people, saying that they're a part of the LG category, thinking it's okay to have sex with white people. So this diversity has done a number on our thinking and understanding, like what white people are doing to us and the damage they have been doing to us. So really tacky, trashy, terroristic. Hate the word. Hate what people think it means, because it doesn't mean anything of value. Comments?
Yeah, I think what you said there was excellent. There's 05, and I think it's like when you said, it's a very dangerous word, dangerous term that white people have. Again, word masters, they've made that term up to fool non-white people. And I do think actually that the author probably should have or could have made or given more commentary on this term in this book. There's a very, very short paragraph, and I think he probably could have delved into that word a little more, because it's a word that I think has really, really confused a lot of non-white people who are victims of white supremacy. And even the line that he had here, where it said, in that paragraph where he said, it simply means that Black people are now needed to sit deeper in the window in order to give them the illusion of inclusion. Now, I think they do that. I think it's done for the illusion. Yeah, I think it's done to give Black people the illusion of power, not the illusion of inclusion. I think it's done to give non-white people, especially Black people, the illusion of power. And putting Black people up front or giving them like token positions is done to fool Black people into thinking that we have some sort of power in a racist system that is close or equivalent to white people, which obviously we don't. So I think maybe the author probably could have maybe spent a little longer in going into the word diversity and why it's so dangerous.
All right, I'm gonna read an email I got from a former professor we're talking about the race problem, and this is one of his responses to it. Thank you for your thoughts. Kimberly Jones just gave a full course analysis in her short presentation. She's incredible. The Jane, okay, blah, blah, blah. To tell the truth, any teacher who conducted an exercise like that on the UC campus would be subject to discipline and without tenure and would be fired. He's referring to Jane Elliott's experiments. Students get indignant and walk out and shut down when challenged in more mild ways. There's a lot of work to be done, and institutional diversity on campus and elsewhere is certainly by no means the solution to remaking the distorted social order on an anti-racist and equitable basis. People have to recognize that there is a problem and they are part of it, and that there are alternatives. I find it interesting that what you rightly pointed out is a pretty mild commentary that I wrote to Berkeley professors has gotten one response from the sociology faculty. That was this email from the department chair. Thank you for sharing this, Brian Sibel. Even what I wrote violated academic protocol. Education is a solution to systematic racism. Changing basic assumptions and definitions of reality to recognize the distortions and oppression that exist. But the university may not be the place where that education will be allowed to happen. Dang. And then, let me see. All right. Yeah, that wasn't the precise email where he goes on about diversity, but still, I think it's constructive information. He offered us some honesty. The university may not be the place where that education will be allowed to happen, which is very telling. But to get back on track, any more comments on diversity? I see Ray may have something to share.
Yes, I just wanted to point out the confusion in the word diversity. The quality, state, fact, or instance of being diverse, difference. Second definition, variety. Okay, now below that, you have a word called divert, which means to turn a person or thing aside from a course, direction, etc., into another, to deflect, to distract the attention of, to amuse, entertain. And then at the end of that definition, it says, see diverse. So diversity may mean include to confuse.
I agree. I think excellent contribution with the Merriam dictionary, because white people have definitely left a cookie crumb for us to follow, and so we can really understand how these words operate. And it's no coincidence that diversity and divert share the same epistemology. So really, really telling. And diversity has been used to divert our attention away from solving the race problem. So very, very telling. So just anyone go ahead, sir. Before.
I have a few things I want to say about diversity. I think what Ray just shared was really interesting. So I don't think I've ever benefited from diversity. I think it's more of a performative, symbolic way to refine racism, white supremacy, because it does create confusion and it gives the false pretense of having imaginary opportunities, and also, creates more conflict between Black people and white people. For example, I remember when I was working in corporate, and I told my manager, who was a white female, that I had got accepted into a particular university, and their response was, "Oh, I applied to that school, but I didn't get in because of diversity. I'm pretty sure some Black girl took my spot." Word for word, that's what you said. So that's really, just interesting. That's how white people think.
Wow, really telling. Thanks for sharing, Sid. And from the chat, diversity this is from Still Learning. Diversity equals tolerating the presence of non-white people in traditional white spaces. Dangerous presumptions associated with the word by people hoping to be included and loved. Very accurate. Let's just stay away from the term and question those who say they're attempting to diversify or include more non-white people in whatever they're doing. Always good to ask questions. So this next word is a very famous concept, very famous in the thought, speech, and behavior of white people, and it's them/those people. It's on page 66, and it's super short, so I'm going to read it and see if folks have some notes that they wrote about it. This code term classifies Black people as some sort of aliens, unlike human beings. And again, we're talking about them/those people phraseology. These, them, those, and the classic you people phrase are derogatory references to people of color. These terms get a hostile reaction from Black people every time they are used. They simply imply that Blacks are less than white people or are foreigners with a disease or a plague. The terms say that Black people are not like other civilized folks. We don't want to have to associate with them any more than necessary. It is clearly a nasty term designed to strike at the self-esteem of a group of people. It is a code with a hard edge, and it really can sting when used in a social confrontation context. When Black public housing residents across the nation sought to move out of the central city into suburban areas, they were met with this type of racially resistant language. The statements range from, "We don't want those people," and "these children have special needs," as if all children don't have special needs, to "crime is coming into the area." And I'm just gonna say that there's a recent show created by a heavily confused victim of racism. I think the show is called Them. And that show definitely paints Black people as aliens, unlike human beings. Because in that show, you just have Black people, I guess, being terrorized by white people throughout the show. And for the Black female to name the show Them is very, very telling as to where her thinking is about this problem. And yeah, there's a famous clip when, like, a white person says "you people," and then a Black person responds, "What do you mean you people?" If the white person were to be honest to that question, they would say niggers or non-white people. are victims of racism. That's what they mean when they say you people or them people. They just mean victims of racism, non-white people who have been put in a subhuman position along with white people, and who have historically, traditionally, currently are treated like animals. No, worse than animals, because PETA is an organization that serves to protect animals. So we are treated worse than animals. We are treated like creatures that need to be destroyed. Again, one of the infinite reasons we should be motivated to solve this problem. And it's just it could be as simple as no longer name calling, no longer believing that white people are your friends. It can start that simple. Thoughts, comments from the panel?
I just came to mind that the white supremacists refer to us as them and those people, but they react unfavorably when we talk about they live. Just throwing that out there.
Yep.
Yeah. I've always understood that they and those people and always meant Black. There goes the whole neighborhood type situation. 05 mentioned the show. I also think in that show, it also shows the Black people being very emotional driven. They don't sit down and plan what they're gonna do as they're being terrorized by this entire white community. They don't come up with plans. They do very emotional things, and the trauma really distorts their reality even further. So definitely do not recommend watching it. I couldn't even finish it because it was just, to me, trauma porn. Every episode, Black people being terrorized and not making constructive decisions afterwards to stop the terrorization from happening.
Yeah, it sounds about right. That goes to show how combining sexual confusion with Area 3 will have Black people not producing, but they will be the face of the show. But the people who have allowed the show to exist are white people, and they love content involving Black suffering and Black misery. So I'm sure this show is very, very popular amongst white people, and of course amongst very, very confused Black people who think that the show is I don't know, constructive, which is most certainly isn't. All right, so I have a clip for this word, which is loss and or decline in property value, which is on page 67. I'm thinking, all right, so I'm going to read the first paragraph and a little bit of the second paragraph. Then I'm going to play the clip because this is very telling, and it's 2021 and this is still happening. The clip is from 2021. Loss and or decline in property value. Code terms used to indicate the devaluation of property and living environments based on race or color. The property argument is a ruse for hiding the real reason why the value of land or capital is decreased. When Black people move into or live in an area, it says that if Black people move into an area, the property values will automatically or eventually depreciate. It does not matter if the income of the Black people in the neighborhood is the same or higher than the whites, and the houses are kept up in a race-based social order. Black does not have the value of white. A Black individual may purchase a house in a rich white community or subdivision. The value of the property stays high so long as the community remains white. If it changes to all Black, the value of the property in all likelihood will depreciate or not increase in value at the same rate. The occupant is Black, and therefore it changes the value because in general, Blacks are less valuable than white. Value is based on race and color. A white neighborhood will have or retain more of its value than an all Black neighborhood. And I'm skipping a little bit. When white people leave in great numbers, the area declines in value. When they move into a new area, that location, the land, houses, and community appreciates in value. The word value means white. And I'm gonna get that clip on the screen so we can show exactly what this looks like. Let's see which one. Yes.
The central Indiana housing market has sent home values skyrocketing. Tonight, one Indianapolis woman says she was left out of that spike because of her race. That homeowners discrimination complaint targets the appraisal process.
She says that the appraised value of her home more than doubled after she took steps to hide her identity.
CBS 4's Jill Glavin looked into that complaint.
You just feel so helpless in the whole thing.
Carlette Duffy wanted to refinance her home in this neighborhood just outside of downtown Indianapolis, but two separate appraisals valued the house at the same or less than what she paid in 2017. Frustrated by the process, she met Amy Nelson with the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana, who spoke at a community meeting about this New York Times article examining discrimination in home appraisals.
So I decided to do exactly what was done in the article. I took down every photo of my family from my house. I took every piece of ethnic artwork out.
Duffy asked a white male friend to sit in for her at a new appraisal. It came back at double the first two, valuing her home more than $100,000 higher.
I was so angry that I had to go through all of that. Just to be treated fairly, I had to go through all of that. It was pretty staggering.
Nelson and Duffy recently filed two housing discrimination complaints, asking the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to investigate the difference in the appraisals. Nelson believes bias played a role and points to the neighborhood comparisons that were used to determine the home's value.
And whether or not those comps were fairly selected is something that is the basis of the complaints that we have filed.
Duffy hopes that her case could serve as a catalyst to ensure the process is fair for everyone, no matter their background.
I'm doing this for my daughter, and I'm doing this for my granddaughter. So that when they come against obstacles, they will know that you can stand up. You can say, this is not right.
In Indianapolis, Jill Glavin, CBS 4 News.
Jill, thank you. We reached out to the Appraisal Institute, which represents appraisers around the country. In a statement, the group said, in part, when we see even one story of a consumer who feels they were treated differently because of their race, it is very concerning because that goes against everything that we stand for. Appraisers take a lot of pride in being an objective source of real estate value information. If anyone believes they have experienced discrimination or bias in an appraisal, we encourage them to report it to the appropriate fair housing agency or state appraiser regulatory agency. We reached out to the companies named in the complaints and have not received any comment. One of them told us by phone he had not been made aware of the complaint.
I had to go through all.
Ooh. So there's a lot here. This is first of all, the amount of coded words used by everyone in this clip, including this Black victim here who she said ethnic, she didn't say Black, and that fair word, the word fair was used at least 4 different times throughout this broadcast, and fair again means white, just as value also means white in a system of white supremacy. This is really telling of example of white power. This white woman was able to increase this victim's home value by $100,000, and that's very telling. And I'll see if other folks have anything to say about this.
To be expected, this just reminds me of redlining and the creation of Black neighborhoods or Black communities, which to me are just nothing more than low economic areas that have highly controlled instances of being hyper violent and having drugs around and just having incorrect behaviors and having all the Black people struggling, all the non-Black people struggling, and just being a very, very not a good place to live. And then you had, this is one of the reasons why those places exist, because there's no value amongst Black people, and while this system of racism, white supremacy exists. So it's just to be expected. This to me, it was an example of the many, many forms of how housing is so important, and also housing is one of the areas that Black people are doing really not doing really poorly and are being sabotaged greatly and by racist man and racist woman. And also, of course, this everyone involved use coded racial words. I heard fair a lot. Ethic, instead of saying Black, she said ethic. Just really interesting.
Yeah, tons of confusion in this clip. The bias, calling racism and white supremacy bias and discrimination is racist men and racist women's bread and butter. They have mastered these words and how to use them, and we just have no idea what is being said, what is being communicated, which is why this book, A Race Code War, along with the books written by Dr. Francis Scott and Neely Fuller Jr. are so important for us to begin to understand what racism is and how it works. And it largely works by word usage. The combination of words that white people use is kind of what holds the system together, I suspect. So this is not a bias, this is not discrimination. This is an example of racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works. And how it works is to keep Black people in a state of misery, devalue their existence and everything that is attached to their existence. So again, motivating factors, hopefully, for folks to get serious about solving the problem. Any more comments before we continue? I think this part is also important. I'm just going to read a little bit more from this race code phrase, loss and or decline in property value. So Khari Enaharo states here on 67, but Asians also comprise the largest number on a percentage basis of non-whites moving into suburban areas. The color yellow is the next level down from white. And in some quarters, Asians are still considered little slant-eyed bastards. Despite these drawbacks, they are still preferred over Black people. And this paragraph is also important. White supremacists do business with Blacks and Asians and interact because it is in their best interest. The Japanese had begun to resist white demands for greater access to their economy. They extolled the virtues of being Japanese and had even started to brag about being racially and economically superior. The Japanese consistently resisted the demand for greater market penetration of Western goods and services. The white economic hammer began to come down. Talk of curbing imports and increasing tariffs and even subtle hints of military action reduced resistance. The Japanese, even though very stubborn, had no choice but to open up their markets to greater white penetration. The once stable Japanese market began to falter along with the rest of Oriental Asia and Brown Asia. As their economies reemerged, the dialogue about racial superiority that was once so prevalent is totally absent. And the final summation, it does not matter how many cars yellow people produce, if they do not have the white seal of approval, nothing can be produced or sold in any white nation. If they were to proceed without white approval, they would be portrayed once again as the yellow peril. This same justification was used very effectively in the 1940s when military force was employed to destroy the economic capacity. Under the system of global domination, white supremacists determine what is valuable and what is not valuable. The true meaning of power It's the ability to set standards and rules that the rest of the world must follow. No coincidence that the Japanese and the area of the world known as Japan was nuked twice. No coincidence that they're not allowed to have a military force, but only a self-defense force. It's not coincidence, but the results of being dominated in a system of white supremacy. Comments from the panel? Alrighty, I hope we all are understanding the game, these word games that have been played on us. I hope we all use this information to correct it. Alrighty, so the next word, does anyone have any notes on crossover?
All of that.
Oh, go ahead, Ray.
No, sir, go ahead.
I was just gonna say crossover. That was one of the code words that I haven't really heard much about. Usually when I think of a crossover, I think about like a car, mixed an SUV and a sedan. But I found it very interesting what he was talking about, especially when he was talking about like Michael Jackson and the concept of a crossover artist. It's at the bottom of 70. The crossover artist is a cultural adaptation who tries to gain the attention of white people for a small moment in time. This desire of people of color will be used by white supremacists as a cover to pretend that they will tolerate blacks and other non-whites. They will quickly say that they collect black, Hispanic, or Asian music or see non-white movies. This little maneuver is effective in opening up mental and emotional doors for social, political, economic, and racial manipulation. So the crossover artist, I thought that was interesting just because it seems like it kind of makes me think like, is hip hop just like a crossover type like industry, like genre of music? Because I see a lot of these crossover artists, I guess. Well, let me back up on that. Because when he's talking about Michael Jackson as a crossover artist, like I can see the distinction, like Michael Jackson being the kind of music that he made. So I understand a crossover artist in that sense, but I think I suspect that these crossover artists still exist, and I think they are largely in hip hop. I think that they make it, they're the kind of like people who make it like so white people can say the N-word. Like that's kind of what I imagine a crossover artist as. And then and then lastly, just at the bottom of 71, a white supremacist will listen to black music, watch black people play sports, and even root hard for them to win. Yet he will go right out and implement policies and programs that impact adversely on the growth and development of black people. The term crossover acts in the same way. So even though we have these, some confused victims might call them like good white people. They will, celebrate, make all this noise with non-white people, and then go right back and implement these policies and programs that destroy black people as a collective. So those are my comments on crossovers.
That reminds me of the movie The Five Heartbeats. Leon's character said that the crossover is nothing but a double cross. And Quaker, you spoke about Michael Jackson. Towards the end of his existence, he was definitely double crossed, even though he may have been considered a crossover artist. And the last paragraph that you read on 71, a white supremacist will listen to black music, watch black people play sports, and even root hard for them to win. I'm quite sure that Julius Caesar cheered hard for his African black slaves in the Colosseum and then implemented policies to expand the system of white supremacy.
Yep. all very accurate, and I truly appreciate this Khari Enaharo's understanding of like what this term has been used for. And I'm just gonna read a bit, and on the screen you can see this movie that will be discussed during the passage read. Page 69. The crossover tag eased the restrictions on Black and white social interactions. It allowed white people to feel even more superior because Black people were once again begging for entry into their world. They wanted to blend in and, if possible, become invisible. One of the biggest examples in the early stages of crossover was the big splash about the relationship between the white actress Raquel Welch and the legendary Black NFL professional football player Jim Brown in the 1976 motion picture Long Rifles. Even the title of the movie was a racial and sexual code term for the power of the long Black penis. It also connoted that Black men had larger sexual organs. A rifle is long. The color is usually black or dark, and it shoots explosive sperm or firepower. The film played heavily on a social taboo of Black men fornicating with beautiful white females on the big screen. Jim Brown played the hero who got the white woman, even though she died in the end. To placate the white audience, she had to be killed. Big black Jim Brown could not be allowed to walk away with the woman classified as the most beautiful female in the world. It was an instant replay of the King Kong syndrome all over again. During this era, Raquel Welch was the number one white sex siren and a top female box office attraction. The casting of Big Black Brown with Welch played on the widely held belief that Black males wanted and, if allowed, would get white females. This was one of the first big screen depictions of Black males and white females being involved sexually. Before this movie, Black men interacted with white females much like actor Sidney Poitier did in the picture Lilies of the Field. He acted like a eunuch with no interest in women. The white female had no contact and displayed no sexual interest in the Black male. The interaction match up between Jim Brown and Raquel Welch set off a storm of controversy in 1976. So incredible. Just the imagery here, just this imagery alone. I'm gonna move this. It doesn't look correct. It definitely looks like Mr. Brown is about to rape this white woman. And that's what the whole movie is designed for, to get white people more on code and understanding that they have to keep the Black male away from the white female because they don't want white female making Black babies, non-white babies. But I encourage that. I encourage Black males to stay away from white females as well. And I encourage Black females to stay away from white men as well, because it's just a dangerous situation. And if you find yourself in bed with a white person, I will guarantee you that it's bad for your mental health, to say the least. But I'm just gonna keep it going. Let me change this because we're getting into this territory now. The tragic Jacksons. Page 70. The crossover word has also been used recently to describe Hispanic pop music artists trying to appeal to the white music market. The crossover artists are still considered secondary performers. This is why white pop star Britney Spears will always be bigger than Janet Jackson. It does not matter that Britney is no more than an imitation of Jackson. Her whiteness assures her top billing. Poor Janet went through extreme efforts to make herself more appealing to white audiences. She started posing as and looking like a white sex symbol and wound up with a smaller nose, lips, and lighter color to whiten up her physical appearance. You know, there used to be a trend, probably still exists. We were free Britney, you know, leave Britney alone. Janet Jackson didn't receive that treatment when she was sexually assaulted on live television by suspected racist Justin Timberlake. Um, and an example of Michael Jackson, victim of racism, beginning to understand a little bit of what kind of sabotage he was experiencing. Page 71, remember the thought-provoking words of the ultimate crossover superstar, Michael Jackson, in July 2002, when he boldly claimed that the music business is racist and treats Black artists differently from white artists. The words come from a man who has gone to great lengths to appeal to white audiences. Michael openly acknowledged what many crossover stars have pretended did not exist. Racism and color domination, and this dynamic admission came after years of sacrifice and some say self-mutilation in order to be accepted by white people or to become white. What he discovered was that in spite of his efforts to please and join in, he is hated and rejected more now than ever before. To crossover means to shed any resemblance of real Blackness and become as white as possible. A white supremacist, I think this is read by folks earlier. Yeah, so really tragic. Many non-white people today, 2021, are still attempting to cross over with the weaves and with the dyeing of their hair blonde and the straightening of their hair and many things that we think will allow us to be accepted by white people. But there's really no way to be accepted by the enemy. The enemy has classified us. Let me rephrase that. White people have classified us as their enemy. Therefore, in order to attempt to be loved by your enemy is a really sad form of insanity. So we should not be attempting to get in white people's good graces or favor, because that is not how the system is designed. You know, we can only at best be a cherished pet by white people, and that is not something we should ascribe to be. We should attempt to be universal man and universal woman, and the only way to do that is to get white people from practicing white supremacy, so we can establish a system of justice. Yeah, and I like here on the 72, he has words, decoded meanings, and rap music equals tough Black youth, funk music equals deep beat Black music / jungle music, reggae music equals Blacks in the Caribbean / drug music, rock / acid music equals hardcore white youth, and rock music equals disenchanted white youth. He has a number of other decoded meanings on this page, but that's all I'll be reading. Any comments, concerns, questions?
Something that I find interesting is I feel like hold on, I can't hear that. I feel like there's a lot, because like what Kwaku was saying, there's a lot of Black artists that try to cross over to the mainstream. But when you think about it, like anything that's like Black music is pretty much the mainstream. Like when you think about a lot of the most popular music out there, no matter if you're like white or Black or Asian, it's usually the same Black artist that almost everyone listens to. And I think it's interesting because now it's like white people are pretending to, like, they're trying to cross over into what would be considered Black music, or almost like pretending to be Black, because they know that there's I guess like there's money in that, even though obviously like the Black people who are in those industries are mistreated. I think that's interesting. It's like a crossing over of the crossover.
Yeah, quite a conundrum to find oneself in. And thank you, Ray, for saying the comment on Michael Jackson being double crossed. Yeah, that's what happens when a victim is allowed to have so much pretend power, imitation power, and yeah, he's definitely sabotaged by the system of white supremacy. And to add insult to injury, they put a black male physician in charge of the sabotage. So really tragic. Really tragic to say the least.
I still look at Michael Jackson and I just cannot believe, like, for me, I suspect we were, it could be conspiracy that we're being fooled, but I just cannot understand how Michael Jackson went from like completely black to how he died. It's just too hard for me to believe it, but I get under a system of racism, white supremacy, I guess never say never.
Yeah, I think because the system of racism, white supremacy exists, he was able to slowly transform into a white man or into his version of a white man. And no one said, hey, look, Michael Jackson, the system is so powerful that it's making Michael Jackson turn white. Instead they just ignored it and believed whatever he wanted them to believe. And also, I think he was even triple crossed because even his supposedly kids, I don't think any of his kids have his actual DNA because they're all white people. His daughter is a white. Paris Jackson is a white female. I don't know his other kids' names, but they're all white. They're all white people. So what a extreme victim.
Yeah, so all that alleged wealth that Michael Jackson may have had definitely went right back to the hands of the white supremacists, because Michael Jackson was a incredibly confused and victimized black male. So he was definitely was led to attempt to change his very being into whiteness. And when he had that surrogate pregnancy, I also agree. I don't think he uses his DNA. So he gave all that wealth and legacy to white children who are off somewhere practicing racism and white supremacy, I'm sure. So very, very tacky.
I just put in the chat, well, not to dwell on this topic, but Michael Jackson had 3 kids, and I saw the youngest one, which I think his name was Blanket, and he's the only one that seemed like he may be non-white. The other ones definitely don't look like they have any like black DNA in them whatsoever, and it just makes it harder to, it makes it harder to believe like that. Okay, so that Michael Jackson that we're seeing, is that actually like a black person who became white, or is that just a white person pretending to be Michael Jackson?
I think the images that this is an image of a victim of racism who has been led to do deranged things to himself in order to be his version of a white person, like what Sir said earlier. But anything is possible in the system of white supremacy. So who knows? But I believe what I just stated to be accurate. So let me go ahead.
I was just gonna say, agreed. Definitely some type of self-mutilation, for sure.
Okay, so the last one. Let me play the clip first, and then I'll read the bits relating to. So next code word is inner city. Inner city.
We're in bed, and then they started shooting, and then my mom came in and told us to get on the floor.
Drug use, gang activity, shootings, drive-bys, there are things that are dealing with and which average kids may not have to deal with.
Every day I hear gunshots, during the night, during the day, it really doesn't matter.
There was shooting, 2 guys dead, 2 more hurt.
2 teenagers were shot outside a busy fast food restaurant.
One of the most extensive studies on post-traumatic stress disorder in the community was done here in Atlanta, and it found the staggering statistic that of those who lived in low-income areas in the city, 46% suffered from PTSD. That is a rate much higher even than soldiers who've seen war.
Spend time in some inner cities and you can understand why, to children in particular, it can sometimes feel like a war zone.
War to them may be a local drive-by between gang rivals, War to them may be walking down the street on a needle or seeing someone, using drugs. That is war. And these kids see this on a daily basis, so they may think it's normal when, we know it's not.
When you look at how the rest of the developed world fares when it comes to gun murders as compared to the US,
I think we've seen enough to get the picture of what the white racist man and racist woman have painted and have created for us. So let's see, here's some words from Mr. Khari Enaharo. This one from page 73. About the term inner city. The term was designed by a white sociologist and literally regurgitated by Black academians in the late 60s as an alternative term to the word ghetto. The term inner city has been visually associated with broken down homes, rodents, and crime. It has the image of drug busts featuring gold-toothed, baggy pants, gangbang Negro males lying on the ground under heavily armed white police control. In the 1970s, the inner city term gained wide acceptance and surpassed the horrible images associated with the word ghetto. It conjures up images of wild, half-crazed, drug-dealing, and crime-oriented Black youth. The term has very little to do with geographical location. If it were simply a matter of geography, there would be equal references to the outer city, upper city, and lower city. It is clear that an inner city has a wholly different meaning. The meaning is racial. The term inner city appeared to be less threatening in the early 70s. Inner city became an acceptable term as used by Marvin Gaye in his super classic What's Going On album. And inner city was an expression of oppression, and it was a call to rally against tyrannical forces. In the late 1980s, the inner city label became a euphemism for Black thugs, hoods, and criminals. It blamed Blacks for their social problems and it shifted the focus away from white supremacy. Very, very important, because once upon a time, Black people understood inner city as being the result of racism and white supremacy, but then they changed it, and they changed the meaning of it, and they changed the way Black people were thinking about it through, I suspect, victimization and spreading confusion, to where we talk about inner city now, 2021. We'll talk about the inner city. People will attempt to do work in the inner city, trying to correct the problems there, all without ever mentioning or understanding that the inner city is such a state because of racism, white supremacy. And that's tragic. As a person who grew up in the so-called inner cities, concentration camp, I would prefer to call it a death camp, known as South Central LA. It is very, very traumatic, to say the least. Let me read some more from page 73. These areas. Oh, yeah, this is actually, I'm going to keep reading because I think that all of this is really important information. The inner city term is now taking on a new context as some white people, mostly white homosexuals and middle-aged whites with money, desire to relocate back into these communities. They are tired of driving 10 to 80 miles a day. Some racists fear that Black people will begin to control water, sewer systems, street lighting, and so forth. They do not want central power in the hands of Black people. The code for taking back the city is wrapped up in a language of revitalization. These areas are attractive again. They are now coded by phrases like the neglected and underserved market, The rhetoric is quietly changing as more white people resettle into the so-called inner city. It will become known as the central city, the new urbanism, or some other fancy sounding code term to indicate that the new pioneer has arrived, resettled the area, and run the savages out. This is exactly what gentrification is. And that's exactly what gentrification looks like. I knew the moment I saw a white family running through my death camp that things were bad. And it only got worse because in the area of the world where I used to dwell, we had this mall called the Crenshaw Mall. And once upon a time, it was, it was a black. It had affordable things for black people. Now it has a bunch of bequeaths, bouquets, or whatever they're called. And it's just seems to be geared towards people who have money, and black people don't have money in that area. So, and the mall was also recently lost to white people. So white people haven't stopped their their settler ways or their conquering ways. They have just refined it, masterfully refined these behaviors.
One thing I'm starting to realize from the clip you showed is the way that they edit these documentaries is so it just the music and the jump shots it really makes you it makes everything, instead of a moment of maybe learning, you're gonna people who are not thinking about this are gonna leave this just feeling like they've been entertained for the 3 minutes of this video. You know what I mean? It's very interesting to me, that this is supposed to be considered I don't know, serious journalism, because it really comes off super sensationalized and super just, I don't want to say over the top, because there is a problem in that these places do experience a lot of violence, but it's not said in a way where you really are empathizing with them. It's said in a way that you're watching a trailer for a movie.
Agreed. Black suffering, Black trauma is often sensationalized in the system because that energy is what white people feed off of. Go ahead.
I thought the same thing, especially the music. I was like, so this is supposed to be about the horrible lifestyle, not lifestyle, the horrible life existence of Black people and in the inner city, and they're playing rap music over a Black child talking about hearing drive-bys every day. So it was very I saw some contrast racism. I don't think rap music should be played in a video where Black children are talking about having PTSD and witnessing murders. It was a very, very, just another piece of racist propaganda that white people can use to justify why they need to exploit and gentrify areas known as, places that like 05 mentioned, South Central Los Angeles, Compton, wherever they're planning to take over next.
Mr. Ray?
I just wanted to read another definition, actually two. Number one, inner city, the sections of a large city in or near its center, especially when crowded or blighted. Blighted, anything that destroys, prevents growth, or causes devaluation. A person or thing that withers someone's hopes or ambitions.
Going for that definition, the greatest blight on planet Earth has been racist men and racist women. Going for that definition. And Khari Enaharo, he gives another excellent example of just where Black people are, things automatically will become lesser in value. And this one, he's using the term decay. When Black people enter an area, the environment starts to decay. So he mentions And I think this is area of the world known as Columbus City, Ohio. There was a mall called the Northland Mall, and this the owner of this mall, he got some competition like a few blocks away in the presence of this mall called Polaris. So he got a bunch of Black people to sign a petition to attempt to save the mall and whatnot. And the Black people, they helped them. They signed a petition and whatnot. And it turns out that this white man was practicing racism within his mall because he had a pager store, and Black people would hang out at the pager, would be around the pager store, and he didn't renew the lease on that particular Black business due to that. And that being said, I'm going to read a little bit more on it. The real reason for page 75, the real reason for the decay was that Black folks moved in and white folks moved out. This pattern is nationwide. It is hidden in race code words that scare away investors and white homeowners. In the process of leaving, they depreciate the value of the land and disinvest in the infrastructure. The reverse happens when whites move back into the area. The price for the housing stock goes up. The term inner city is a race term, and it follows Black people no matter where they go. The new sayings are the inner city is expanding, urban sprawl, or now urban scrawl. Decoded, it means that the niggers are coming to the suburbs and bringing decay. It is part of the new urban woefulness language. The whole sprawl issue is wrapped around the question of color. For years, white people have run from Black people. They move quickly if the area appears to attract large numbers of Black people. Code words such as lowering academic standards and lowering property values are used to justify relocation. This is not about physical development. Expansion has been occurring for years, with white people moving and building new communities. This is about who is coming to the suburbs, or guess who's coming to dinner, or there goes the neighborhood, or not in my backyard, NIBI. The newest migration pattern features public housing residents, tax credit housing, and other poor Black people leaving the inner city for the promised land of the suburbs. This has created a hell on wheels for whites because they thought they had moved out of the reach of Black people. The following are selected examples of racial code words for the movement of Black people into previously white communities. So there's a bunch here. I'm just going to read a few. Far-flung suburbs, we covered that in one of the earlier broadcasts. There goes the neighborhood. Sarah mentioned this earlier. Guess who's coming to dinner? There's a whole film, multiple films about this concept. And not in my backyard is a I hate to call it a hilariously racist, but it is. But that's just the mentality of the white people. They have this mentality with a white person. Who remembers that clip with the Black male walking around a neighborhood and he's accosted by this giant white man for being somewhere he's not supposed to be? It got a lot of attention. I remember it. And yeah, that mentality comes from, being in a system of white supremacy. So Black people, we need to stop attempting to go where the white people are, and we need to start understanding what it means to be white and how can we eliminate this system of white supremacy, because we should not be okay with our existence being attached to no value. We shouldn't be okay with everything that we touch seemingly decaying because white people have designed it in that way. It's incorrect. It's a hell on wheels for us, I would say as well. Any more comments on this race code word? Inner city.
That Black people, we should not be okay with our existence being a negative factor on planet Earth via the lens of racism, white supremacy, and we should be able to move freely without, supposedly devaluing spaces and devaluing the things that we associate ourselves with. So get some books, get some guns, and just really try to figure out a constructive way to solve the race problem.
I just wanted to read the definition of urban sprawl: the spread of urban congestion into adjoining suburbs and rural areas. And the second definition of sprawl is to crawl in an awkward, ungainly way.
Interesting. Sorry about the audio issues. My mic came unplugged earlier. I'm gonna read some things from the chat. This is from Drink Water, the beginning of the Chirac narrative, and that in itself is very telling. Chicago, Iraq, and combining the two into this Chirac concept, because the area, the death camp known as Chicago, is plagued with death and violence as a result of the system of white supremacy and the very, very direct and indirect actions of white people. This is why this concept Chirac exists. So yeah, that's also a refinement of this inner city vernacular. So thanks for that, Drink Water. Every time you call out racism, they say black on black crime in Chicago, aka yep. I've had tons of back and forth with white people using that, using white data, white numbers, and white statistics to practice racism against me in that manner. But if you understand the system, you understand how white people are just masters of deception, then we can save our time and energy with our interactions with them.
But they leave out the fact that people commit violent crimes amongst those who they're around the most, meaning people in their own group. And those white people and all white people should really feel a sense of relief that Black people have not decided to get justice in that way, because we're definitely due.
What's crazy, what's interesting too is like, that doesn't refute that we live in a racist society. If anything, that explains that we live in a racist society, because, you know, Black people are being mistreated by white people, and yet they're hurting other Black people. So it just shows you like the state that Black people are in because of the system. It doesn't make sense to say Black people hurt other Black people, so racism doesn't exist. Yeah. It's like, wouldn't you retaliate? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I understand the racist logic as the niggers are killing each other, so why can't we do it? You know, you guys are mistreating each other, so why can't we mistreat you or continue mistreating you? But yeah, I understand what you're saying. You know, from the counter-racist perspective, of course, it's evident that, you know, Black people killing Black people is a result of the system of white supremacy. But most people, white and Black, have been trained in racist logic. So that's why statistics work. That's why racist science works, and because this is what we have been trained to compute. You know, we can be told a whole bunch of stuff like this person is now they them, and this person is now a trans person, and we can be all these concepts compute in our minds, because that's how we've been trained. But you start saying white people are suspected racists, we live in a global system of white supremacy. Black people start saying, "Well, wait, what do you mean?" White people start saying, yeah, because they have been trained against logic, against reality. So that's my understanding of why this happens. I'm pretty sure I'm like at least 98% correct. Any more comments before I share my final notes regarding the final word from this section? All right, so the last word here that I have notes on is quotas, and I'm gonna read his understanding of quotas. The term quota is code for giving Blacks special treatment. This word has become the lightning rod in the white conservative attack against affirmative action. The word quota, when decoded, means a nigger getting something for free at the expense of white people. This word, along with the concept of affirmative action, stirred up the notion that every white deal had to include a Black individual or business. This would have destroyed the tight network of white supremacy, the so-called good old boys network. This word was attacked furiously in the courts, media, and political circles. The system of quotas has always been used in the white world to keep Blacks and other non-whites at bay. As long as this was the practice, the word quota never evoked any particular reverence and had a racial connotation attached to it. To a white supremacist, this word says that the old boy or old girl network will be broken up and or confused if this were to happen, and white domination would suffer a severe blow. I understand quotas now more constructively, and also this goes to allow me to understand quotas in regards to the race soldiers. You know, they have quotas, you know, they have to, like, you know, give out a certain amount of tickets, make a certain amount of arrests, and the targets of meeting these quotas, I'm 100% sure, is often Black people and non-white people. Many places have to meet quotas and whatnot, but also parking enforcers also have to meet quotas, and they often target Black people to meet these quotas. So that's also a way to understand these quotas. And often, I think quotas happen at the end of the month, which is why Black people are often ticketed more. We can receive a lot of tickets towards the end of the month because race soldiers are often trying to meet their quotas, and it's much easier to ticket a Black male, Black female, because one, they don't understand the law, they don't understand that they're a target of a global system of white supremacy. So it's easy to write them tickets for nonsense, or just to trick them, deceive them, and to get doing something that will get them a ticket or get them arrested or something like that, versus a white person who is often pretty well understood on how they should be treated. But because Black people don't understand the system of white supremacy that as thoroughly as we should, you know, these quotas are often given to us, and yeah, we pay the hard consequences globally. And any comments from the panel? Okay, so would anyone like to get us started on closing comments?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and it's given me a profound understanding of words and how these words are used as weapons. Going back to the beginning of the book, the sticks and stones things, definitely was told to us because of the confusion or the unwillingness to face the problem. And that problem is the global system of racism, white supremacy.
Epically put, Mr. Sert. Closing comments. If you don't have any closing comments, could you let that be known, so we're not waiting on people who are going to chime in.
This was a very constructive business meeting. I appreciate the clarity shared with everyone, and looking forward to the next meeting.
Yeah, go ahead, quickly.
This is Kwaku. Constructive business meeting. A lot of this was, I learned a lot, especially with Ray reading the definitions of the words. I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but I think as I'm going to be reading this book from now on, I'm going to be also looking up the definitions of them, because I think the actual definitions, along with the racial coded messages, are very constructive. Looking forward to the next business meeting.
Yeah, I found that meeting to be very informative, and I agree. Combining the reading the definition and having Ray read it was really informative because it really helps you see the ways that I guess the words are defined by white people and how they're truly defined. So I learned a lot. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful.
Thank you for everyone's participation. I think that Race Code War makes an excellent addition to the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept word guide, and definitely try to make it a habit to look up words, because sometimes we think we know, we think we know a word, we think we understand, and we really don't. Great business meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Miss B. So from the chat, I'm going to read some final remarks here. Ignorance is from Still Learning. Ignorance is a product of racism and white supremacy sold all over the world, wholesale, under the guise of education. Accurate. And Drinkwater says they can even hijack positive words like articulate as part of their racist code to refer to non-white people. And yeah, when we are told that you're so articulate or you speak so well, the racial coding for you sound like a smart nigger versus a slang talking Black person or whatever classification we have been deemed at that point in time. And and the final reading from the chat. Drinkwater, that's our flip side, crabs and bucket mentality. But when you are the crab that escapes that bucket, you are still just a crab to the white prison wardens outside the bucket. Again, accurate. Of course, they love nothing more than compliant officers to maintain the system and tell other slaves, see one of you made it. Yep. So and that goes into the first Black person to achieve or do that is another way they practice racism, by letting a Black person do a small accomplishment. Say, the first Black person to go to Mars or whatever. How about we have the first Black person to solve this race problem? That's something to actually celebrate. Other than that, we should not give a damn about the first Black person to do anything, because it's just racist man, racist woman, racially showcasing. My final closing comments, I truly appreciated the search bringing up the cannibal part, because that a lot of constructive information was said during that, and just reminded me of why I started doing this effort, because Black people are being consumed worldwide, whether it's through our energy, or literally being consumed physically, being kidnapped by white people. We go missing. Black people go missing at the largest number. The largest rate of people who go missing are Black people, and I suspect we're being sold into, of course, sex trafficking, but I suspect more nefarious things are happening with the Black people who go missing. And I think cannibalism and occult practices are one of them. So very, very telling. We must solve this problem or get used to being food stuff for white people, racist man and racist woman. And that's my closing comment. Thanks for the audience and the participation from Drinkwater, Still Learning, Edward Williams, who was here with us earlier, and Teo891. Thanks for your contributions. Hope it was constructive. CRWS signing out.